What's going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for watching the show. Wanted to talk to you about our friends over at Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching sports. This app is really easy to use. You just pick more or less on a few player stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your cash on a single lineup. Best of all, Prize Picks will give you $50 when you play your first $5 lineup. Win or lose, you'll get $50 for playing. Use the promo code PFF and download the app now. Let's talk about the Buccaneers. Look at their draft haul there. Dalton, good football players. I didn't think that they were going to get drafted by the Buccaneers, especially the guy at the very top in Emeka Egbuka. I felt like wide receiver was very much a luxury for this team, but clearly they just couldn't pass up on the player. So they go Emeka Egbuka in the first round. They take the chance on Benjamin Morrison in the second round with him suffering the hip injury earlier this season, sort of dealing with that, wondering what he's going to be like post-hip injury. Third round, they stuck in the secondary and went with Jacob Parrish. Fourth round, this is where they finally addressed the trenches. David Walker, the edge rusher, and then the versatile defensive lineman, Elijah Roberts here. And then in the seventh round, they got a guy who, I understand the concerns over him, how much of an outlier he would be for the NFL, given the fact that he's like the third lightest football player to ever come in the NFL over the last 25, 30 years, and Tez Johnson. But great tape. He's got great tape this past year, had great tape at the Senior Bowl. So the PFF staff gave this one a B+. What would you give the Buccaneers draft?
I could probably agree with that. I think, look, in a vacuum, you look at the 6 football players they got, and they're all really good players. Some of my favorite players to watch in college football over the last couple of years. It's interesting that Jason Light stuck with what essentially must have been just the top player on his board with the 19th overall pick in Emeka Egbuka when he's already got a loaded receiver room. Now, this is once again the last year of Mike Evans' contract, and maybe he goes 1 year at a time or starts getting into the Larry Fitzgerald method of just going one year contract at a time. They've done it with Levante David at linebacker. Maybe now they'll do it with Mike Evans. But either way, now you've got an extremely loaded receiving core with Egbuka, with Evans, with Chris Godwin, with Jalen McMillan, even guys like Trey Palmer behind them, Tez Johnson you mentioned in the 7th round. So they're certainly not short on weapons on offense. And then I really like the value of even the next 4 players that they got. Double dipping at corner with Ben Morrison, who honestly, if he's healthy, I think is the 4th best cornerback in this draft. Had great tape at Notre Dame and just got to get over the hip injury. Jacob Parrish I had as a top 10 corner, gives you some inside-outside versatility. You mentioned, and part of this to me was, and I was wondering if they would draft a safety, but you mentioned that Tyke Smith might move back to safety in a more traditional safety role than the slot role, and maybe Parrish gets in the slot here. And now they've got a ton of options at corner, right? You've got McCollum, you've got Jamel Dean, you've got Tyke Smith who can play in the slot, Jacob Parrish, Ben Morrison. So they're certainly not short on the outside on either side of the ball. And then even on day 3, I have to like this pair of edge rushers they got. I really like David Walker when I dug in deep, and I thought he reminded me of Josiah Stewart a lot from Michigan. He was an alternative to that sort of player, undersized, explosive, really productive pass rusher. And Elijah Roberts from SMU has been one of my favorite players to watch in college football over the last couple of years. So you get the speed with Walker, you get the power with Roberts. Overall, 6 really good football players. I would just say the only thing I was a little surprised about, and this kind of comes with their first-round pick, too, is not attacking the linebacker position, right? I mean, they're really kind of thin right now. It's Levante David and Micah Walker is what we're looking at starting at linebacker for them. So that's kind of the weak spot on this team for me right now.
They like Savashier Dennis, who missed most of last year with an injury, so I think that they are hoping that he's going to be a starting linebacker for them moving forward. But they need another one. There's no question about it. They still have Levante David, but they're going to need another one long-term. Not touching linebacker, obviously something that was a bit of a surprise, but it just felt like, with Chris Paul lasting until the 5th round, or I think it was pick 172 where he ended up getting drafted. I mean, him lasting until the 5th round sort of just told you what the league thinks of this linebacker class. They just didn't think very highly of it. So that was probably included with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. I don't think you can go worse than a B+ for the Bucs draft, just because of what you said. They've just got such great football players that they acquired, and they feel good about it. But it could be even higher. If you could give it an A-, you could even give it an A, and I wouldn't really fight you too much on it with that kind of value, because if you just believe in the guys they brought in, I still feel like they hit corner pretty hard. They hit defensive line pretty hard. Yeah, they didn't hit linebacker, but it's such a lower valued position that it's something that you can get good linebackers every year. I'm intrigued. This draft would have It's funny because if they would have drafted Jihad Campbell at 19, like let's say they were okay with the shoulder injury, they draft Jihad Campbell at number 19. I don't think that you would find anybody anywhere that would have given this less than an A minus at the very worst, because they were hitting all their needs with really talented players, but they end up going with Igbokwe here. And I think that the thought process there is Chris Godwin's coming back from injury. Best case scenario, he's ready for week 1 next season. I think that would be very lucky of them if he were to be the player they need him to be in week 1. So now you have a bit of an insurance policy where Igbokwe can step in right away. You don't have to rush Chris Godwin back. They have Mike Evans, maybe for another 1 to 2 years, but Igbokwe is already sort of the succession plan to Evans, and depending on what happens and how Chris Godwin looks after injury, I get it. I do get it. I didn't think that we were going to get this kind of a draft class with Tampa Bay, them getting so far ahead of what felt like maybe a longer term wide receiver need, but it's hard to argue the football players that they brought in here.